Hello, hello, hello. Hello. Greetings and salutations. Friends, Romans, countrymen. Hello, thanks for coming today and joining for, I think, the only design-focused presentation. Let's close the door, maybe. That might be a good idea. Cool. Sorry, I have a theater background, so I like to I like to have your attention. So no, but thanks so much for joining today. I'm super excited to be here to be talking about design in a development environment. And so I guess just to get started, I just would like to know how many designers are in the space today. So designer, 1, 2, 3, 2.5. 2.5 designers. Okay. I don't know. Is it working? Can you hear me okay? Okay. Let's close that door and then I will bellow. So I apologize. Okay, so since we're mostly developers in the room, I would just like to hear from just a few people, why you're here today. Why here as opposed to progressive web apps? So anybody just shout it out.
Mostly because designers do not understand anything about design. You have to explain them things.
Okay. It's true. Designers know everything about nothing. It's true. Okay, what else?
We have designers too as developers, because we create our product, not only designers, we also.
Absolutely, because ultimately we're designing a service, not a picture. That's true. Yeah.
So some of us have a background where we studied both development and some design and UX courses.
Okay, great. Anyone else? Okay, cool. So great. So I'm going to get into it. I mean, that's nice to know for me, so I could kind of better point things into the direction. And so I'm just going to get started. So designing for mobile, context matters. So hello, bonjour. My name is George Eid, and I actually live in Paris, France. And to give you a little context, you probably don't notice a French accent because I'm actually American. And I'm from New York. But in fact, I moved to New York in 1996. I actually grew up in Chicago, Illinois. I'm sure you know of that city. But however, whenever I hand my passport or my driver's license to someone, any government document says that I'm from Detroit, Michigan. And even though I was born there and lived there maybe 3 months out of my year. But if you're thinking culturally, you look at me and you're like, is he Greek? Is he Italian? Is he, what is he? And this is something that I get all the time in France because French people want to know. Like most people. I'm actually Jordanian. My parents were immigrants from Jordan in 1971, the year before I was born, and they moved to the United States to make a better life. And here I am. But if you actually take it a bit further, my blood is not Jordanian. And you go to any Jordanian and they would call me an ajnabi, which means foreigner. And that's because I'm actually Lebanese. And my name, Eid, is a Lebanese name. So everybody knows that. And so the funny thing about this is all my life, I thought I was from Chicago and I thought I was Jordanian. But for the last 12 years living in France, they actually call me, you're from Detroit and you're Lebanese. And that's one of the plights that I've been dealing with because like French people love context. They love all of it. And they like the truth and they like seeking and they're like always digging in. And my wife always says that whenever you have the little conversations, you don't need to have the big conversations. And it's true, I think everybody loves context because without context, we wouldn't fully understand anything. And so what is context? Well, context is the circumstances that form the settings of an event, statement, or idea, and in terms of which it can be fully understood and assessed. So basically, context matters a lot. It's broken down from the Latin word contextus, and which means together, and terra. Oh, how do you say that in Latin? Texere. So weave together. So anyway, that's copy and paste from a dictionary. So let's move on. So context, of course, applies to designing digital products. And that, my friend, is why we're here today. And so context can be viewed in many layers. We can view it from the technology perspective. We can view it from the device perspective. Or we can view it from the user's context. And we're going to talk about all of that. So basically, I'm going to give you a little overview of my agency, because that's going to give you a little bit of context. Also our purpose, designing for mobile, and then leaving some time to chat at the end. So our agency. So we're a digital product company and also an incubator. We incubate our own products. I founded the company. I'm the founder, CEO, and I founded the company in 2003. We're independently owned and creatively motivated. So if you're curious what the name Area 17 is, it's actually the optical cortex of the brain, or the visual cortex of the brain. It's where all sensory data comes together and creates vision. So interestingly enough, the mechanics of your eyes only make up 40% of your vision. And so where does the rest of your vision come from? You know, why are you born with blurry vision? It's because it comes from sensory memory. And so your vision is actually coming from your touch, your taste, your feel, every sense coming together and in creating memories. And that's why, for example, as a designer, I might see a chair differently than a developer might see a chair. Because I might have a different educational background that, studied product design, for example. So we're a global agency, and we work across multiple time zones, and we have studios in Paris and in New York. And so in New York, we serve the United States, and in Paris, we serve Europe and the rest of the world. And we're actually 49 people, and even though each office has their own full set of team, we work together as a single unit. We're kind of like an octopus, but with 98 arms. So over the years, we've kept ourselves purposely small, and I think that's a really important aspect of our company, because we wanted to maintain craft and also be selective with the clients we work with. And we want to work with clients that we truly admire and believe in. And so over the years, we've worked with clients that span the entire world, except for Latvia. We haven't worked with a client in Latvia yet, but I think most of you who live here work with clients outside of Latvia anyway. And we've produced over 300 digital products and brands. So you can see some of them here. We work with a lot of cultural brands, like the Paris Opera, Paris Photo, et cetera, Harvard Art Museums. We also work with a lot of editorial brands, and especially like native ones. We created Quartz, Good, Engadget, for example. And also some traditional editorial brands, bringing them online and trying to, because they're like dying. Like all these like native digital companies really took over the space, and they're struggling in the print world. And so how do they take advantage of it? And also working with media companies like Vice. We created, I'm sure you know about it, but the Vice broadcasting system, which eventually just now is Vice Video, but a video platform that was serving all of their videos across 28 markets in 23 different languages, and the content management system, that managed all of that. Also Charlie Rose, we took 20 years of interviews. I don't know if you know Charlie Rose, but he does an interview every single week, and for the last 20 years, and we created an archive of, and completely searchable with the ability to listen and so on and so forth. We work with e-commerce platforms and fashion brands, and we also work with a lot of startups. We happen to have a lot of experience with two-way marketplaces, like creating our own product called Curb, which is a buy and sell website, Slash, which is our agenda tool, which is ours, but also working with Etsy and Deering Hall and things like that. We work with a lot of institutions. We love humanities and we love the sciences. And last but not least, we work with technology leaders. We've been working with Facebook for a good 6 years now, doing some really exciting things with them. We were embedded at Apple for a couple of years, and we've done a lot of work with Google from New York. So talking about our purpose, is this interesting? It's all good. It's a lot of context, but you know, it's important. It's cool. So, our purpose. You know, what's our purpose? So basically, it's we plan, we create, and we grow digital product. So our mission is to create product and brands with utility and substance, designed to improve life, and that's the key word. This idea of improving life, because ultimately, I don't know why you guys are here, you know, but if we're not actually making things better, if we're not saving ourselves time, if we're not enjoying life, if we're just staring at a computer screen and just becoming old and fat, you know, like, you know, what's it all about? Why are we trying to innovate for innovation's sake? And so our goal is to create authentic experiences that resonate with people on a deeply personal level, empowering them and conveying a positive vision of life. And that's what design is all about. That's what design brings to the table. You guys might be solving the problems, you know, and designing. You guys are engineers. You're not just developing something. You're solving problems. You're actually designing. But that thing that we call design, that these people called designers do, is this idea of adding ambition, adding humanity, adding emotion, adding, you know, and making that connection. It's the human interface, so to speak. You know, it's where, you know, we get attracted to things. And I think that's, you know, so that's the idea of, you can't design and have a negative vision of life. It's a positive vision of life. So, when we first started the company, we didn't want to build just another fucking digital agency. That if we're going to do this, we're going to do it with soul. And that we must be an agency for change. You know, and be able to like apply arts and science to a productive end, to basically make the internet an extension of our daily lives, not a distraction from it. This all plays into context, by the way. So in 2003, we started with 3 simple principles, and these are kind of the foundation of everything that we do, and therefore our approach to design. The first, we're inspired by modernist design. So first, we bring the principles and craft of modernism into digital. I remember I designed my first website in 95, 94. And during those first years when I was working in the industry, like everything was crap. Like all the design was crap, because traditional designers, the kids that I went to school with, you know, just didn't want to do web. You know, they're like, that's ugly. Why would you want to do that? You know, and you know, and so we kind of had a new generation of designers that weren't trained as designers, so they weren't actually bringing classic modern design to the table. And so we really wanted to say, you know, no, this is a digital space, and yes, we don't control things anymore because designers like to control. You know, we can't control anymore. We can't say this is how it goes, that things are going to wrap, you know, how they're going to wrap, and things are going to be responsive, and things, you know, how do we design a vernacular, a new vernacular, a digital vernacular that is not like building a foundation that's made out of cement, like designers like to do, you know, but rather a flexible foundation that could ebb and flow. And that's what excited me, and that's what excited my partner when we started the company, is to be able to revel in accidentalism in design. and let things, flow and stuff like that. And so, so basically, I really love this quote here, but is there should be no such thing as art divorced from life, with beautiful things to look at and hideous things to use. That we need to bring these things together, and that functionality should be and must be, it should be emotional. But it's not just about, that's a really clear point, is it's not just about making it beautiful. Like, you could say, it's like, okay, it might be hideous, but at least it's usable. And okay, fancy designer, you want it to look beautiful too, that's cool, but that's not MVP, That's fair. That's a fair statement. However, Google had a really big lesson in the last 5 years. I don't know if you guys remember, 5 or 6 years ago when the design director at Google wrote an open letter about how Google was making design decisions, based off data, and they were doing data-driven design, and they were just incrementally improving things at the micro level, and he left the company, and it was a big, la-di-da. But then I heard this story, so I'm telling the story secondhand while we were working at Google, because we helped work on some of the branding work, including the style guidelines for Chrome. But basically, Larry Page woke up one day and realized one thing, and maybe it's from this situation or not. I don't know. I'm piecing this all together. But basically, he realized that they were optimizing who they were, rather than searching for what they had the potential to be. And I think that's an important point about design. Design represents potential. You can design something, you can put something online that's hideous. You can deliver a product that's hideous. However, you're not realizing your potential, because ultimately, one, it's the human interface to people, and people are attracted to things, and people are not logical. People are emotional beings that respond. They're going to choose the better looking product over the ugly product that's probably better. And so, design represents potential. And I personally believe that's the day that Google became who they are today and really solidified their dominance. Because at the time, people were talking about them slipping, that they're struggling with just the advertising revenue. They're still not able to monetize other things, yada, yada. And then boom, within a 6-month period, Area 17 and probably 20 other agencies were hired to redesign all of Google. And of course, internal teams also. And it was a revolution. All of a sudden, it was a singular platform. Everybody realized, aha, it came together. And I believe they realized their potential there. So anyway, that's an interesting story about. So we as a company, we place a strong emphasis on craft in every detail that we do. I don't know if most of you are developers, so you don't follow my company, but we have something called the Pixel School, where how we design for digital for interface. And so if you want to check it out, it's at guides.area17.com, and it kind of just lays out our approach, our design techniques of getting pixel perfect accuracy in design. And also our signature is apparent through an absolute commitment to precision and practicality and minimalism. So, and this is, I'm taking you through the Pixel School. There's just some of the things that you can kind of go through. So, so anyway, so going to the second point. The second point is we must be interdisciplinary, not just multidisciplinary. That we strive for singularity, blending the practices of branding, design, and engineering into a singular discipline, a modern interactive system. And and the thing is I don't know if you know Bauhaus and Walter Gropius, but he once said that like a building, he was an architect. A building is the coming together of all fine arts. And when we were working for opera, the opera in Paris, I realized that opera is the coming together of all performing arts. And really, digital, is the coming together of all communication, arts, and sciences into one singular unit. And I think that's a really important aspect of this. And that form and function should be one, joined in a spiritual union. We can't, and we realize that we can't simply be a design firm that does a little bit of development, or we can't be a development firm that does a little bit of design. That we have to be both, that we have to bring them together. And just like Apple couldn't have revolutionized the personal computing space by just simply designing a computer, they actually had to build one. We can't actually affect change on the internet through design simply by designing for it. So it's a modern idea now that design and engineering, is something that needs to be unified, and that's probably why all of you guys are here, or some of you guys are here, But what people are sometimes confused with is, that we do branding in engineering. So, like, I could be in a meeting talking about development and building a product and things like that. And the next day I can be in a meeting creating the logo for a website. And it's sometimes confusing to people. But the thing is that branding is no longer this proprietary thing. By the way, when I say branding, I'm not talking about marketing. So don't confuse the two. We do not do any marketing. We don't do advertising or anything like that. When I say branding, I mean the act of defining the soul of an organization and then showing it through a logo and a visual identity. So you've always heard the expression that actions speak louder than words, and you can judge a person's character through their actions. That's clear. We live that. We're humans. I can tell you I'm awesome, but if I'm a dick, then you're going, if I do things that are like rude, you're not going to believe that I'm awesome. And so, and when you think about it, an organization is created between, an organization's brand's created between the interactions between the organization and its customers, those interactions. And digital enables direct interactions between these parties, and it is the sum of all these interactions that make the brand, really making the internet the purest form of branding. So therefore, if branding is behavior, then developers are in fact modern brand designers. And just as behavior-driven development aims to bring together to create a common language between the business and development, we're aiming to create a common language between the branding activities and the engineering, bringing them together so that the code is actually an application of the brand. Because when we create a brand, we're creating we're creating behaviors. We're defining the behaviors between user and businesses, and the application becomes the application of that. So anyway, ha 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 ha. But is that making sense? Is that idea making sense, or are you like, you're insane? I'm not a branding person. Yeah. Anyway, we can talk more about that later. The third point is great work comes from great people. Above all, that we must create like a work environment that allows people to have a good life. I don't know how things work. I don't know where you guys are from or where you work, but in America, like people are working nights and weekends, and people are working their asses off. People are living life through the lens of their computer. And we hope to attract people who want to do the best work of their career by working in an environment that allows them to cultivate their craft in a deep, substantial way. However, we don't want to burn people out. And a lot of companies in the United States now offer unlimited vacation days. But if you take that vacation day, you're going to be looked down upon. People are like when we were at Apple. You'd go home at midnight, and then at 2 in the morning, you get a phone call and say, "Come back in. We need you to work on something for 9 o'clock the next morning." But most, like a lot of product people have become zombies. I see a few zombies out there right now. No, living life through the lens of their work, as opposed to through the lens of their life. So what we want to, we want to create an agency that allows people to have a life and to bring their rich personal experiences to the work that they do. Because every great person, every person who has created great art, great culture, great things that have added and moved civilization forward, have also lived or tried to live, a great life. And I think that's an important part of it. So, anyway. Okay, so let's get into it. Designing for mobile. Ready? You guys feel good? All right. So at Area 17, we build mobile web apps, and we also build native apps. However, primarily we do web. I mean we get hired for mobile apps, here and there, but our real focus over the years and since the early days has been HTML, CSS, JavaScript, from a front-end technology perspective, and we love building. What's that? Oh, sorry. What? Huh? So anyway, we love the ubiquity with web apps, and we also love the fluidity and the integration with the ecosystem with native apps. It's kind of like torn between two lovers. So what we're going to do, I'm going to focus on some UX context challenges regarding mobile web, and then move into a more meatier subject about user experience and context design. And then I've also just to have some visuals sprinkled in some of our work, so you can kind of see what we do. So how are we looking on time? Okay, not so good. Okay. So basically, as mobile asserts its dominance, many designers adhere to a mobile-first approach. The idea of designing and coding for mobile, then progressively enhancing for desktop. In 2012, we designed, I don't know if you know Quartz, QZ.com. And so we were hired by The Atlantic to design the brand for QZ or Quartz, and also design the website. And but what was really interesting is it was early. It was 2012, and mobile first was only coming to be a new thing. And they said, not only do we want you to go mobile first, we want you to go mobile only. But it wasn't an app. It was desktop. I mean, it was a web. And at first we were kind of confused. We were excited and confused. We're like, okay, wow, cool, we can really do this. But at the same time, we were like, is this going to work? But we went for it. And it was interesting because by ignoring the desktop context, we were able to serve the mobile context, which is an obvious point to most of you who are mobile developers. But it was new to us. And the first thing that we did is we started to simplify the branding, the headers, the kind of going Chromeless, so to speak. And once we started dropping the Chrome, we started realizing is like, okay, where is the brand living? And we started to realize that the brand lived in the interactions and the transitions and and all of that. And so, and then the second thing we did, which is something we've always wanted to do, is kill the right-hand column. Now again, you guys are mobile people, but like, you know, on a web context, there was a study in 2007 that we participated, it was on us, our work was included in it, done by AOL, that said like 0.007% of all users, I just made that up by the way, use the right-hand column. Like nobody uses the right-hand column, you know, and it still stays there just for advertisers, you know, so that we can have a place for advertising. And so we've known since 2007 with fact, empirical evidence, and yet we're still clients are still asking us to put it there, you know. But with Quartz, we got to kill it, and that was awesome. And then finally, we decided to kill the homepage because they were building a business intelligence editorial platform. And they were telling us in the brief that they really wanted, they knew what was right to read. They wanted a curated experience. They didn't want you know, people to come and just select where they're going, etc. And so we decided to kill the homepage. But not only kill the homepage, kill the listing page. Not only kill the listing page, but send someone to their first, to the first article. I got 15 minutes, by the way, just so we're on the same page. So basically, we sent people to the first article. And we're like, okay, well, there's, you know, if this is business intelligence, there's one thing you should read right now. And then in 5 minutes, there's one thing you should read right now. You know, and so on. And so we ended up, you know, going right to the first article. But then we needed to go to the next article, and so we used this kind of new technique that was starting to come about called lazy loading. But we wanted to lazy load in not listings, not more listings and stuff like that, but the next article. You know, and you know, and so like literally as you scroll, you just went from one article to the next article to the next article, and then we had to figure out from a performance you know, perspective how to dump things that were previously loaded and so on and so forth. And so it was a really interesting experience to be able to do that. Also, last but not least, by removing the right hand, you really kind of have to use the website or the mobile app to really understand it because screenshots suck. But one of the things that, by getting rid of the right-hand column, we needed to figure out where to put the advertising. And so we started putting integrated advertising into the page. But instead of just putting, I mean, here's an example of like one that's like, it's a video actually. But like the first advertiser that we did was Boeing. And instead of putting their, like an advertising in there, we actually pulled in their Instagram feed. And they had incredible engagement. People were clicking on, you know, photos of airplanes, and it was a success. So there was a big success. Within just 3 months after beta, Quartz received 1.4 million unique visitors on mobile. The infinite scroll concept is now a bit of an industry standard, especially in editorial sites. And the premium ad approach created a bit of a revolution in reference to what's now called in-feed advertising, or, you know. So I'm sorry about that because we all hate advertising. But at what cost? You know, one of the things that we realized after we launched Quartz is desktop was like dead. And so they were getting all this traffic on mobile and tablets, but desktop was completely dead. And people were just simply not using it. And so we kind of had to come back, you know, and we added back a homepage, you know, to summarize things. We added back certain things that worked in the desktop environment, and then the desktop kind of exploded, and now they both kind of have their own worlds. And so, you know, and I think that's one of the challenges that we face, like especially like when our technology is like responsive design, at least from a designer perspective, we work with responsive design. And if I asked you to design for just desktop and not think about mobile, you're going to take advantage of everything that desktop offers. which is more from a branding perspective. You have more space for the brand. You have more composition from a design perspective, etc. And if I tell you that you're going to design for mobile context, you're going to take advantage of every feature that mobile offers. But if I tell you to design for both, you're going to compromise. And that's where we're kind of like left standing every single day as designers with responsive design. Like, are we going to design mobile first or desktop first? And if we design desktop first, then mobile's going to suffer. And if we design mobile first, then desktop's going to suffer. So it was a really simple, elegant solution. And we use it on websites. I'll go through this really quickly. This is the Opera website. Again, you can't see it really great, but this is a behemoth website, and I mean huge, with tons of functionality and tons of, it's the opera, it's the ballet, it's e-commerce, it's a magazine, we tried to build Le Troisième Scène, which is the third stage, which is kind of opera on the internet. And so really big thing. Over 300 people administer the website each day. So I mean, it's huge. 70% of the revenue is done through the website. But at the end of the day, it's basically it was designed for desktop, and then we responded to mobile. And ultimately, that it leads to compromise. And it's not only compromise from a design perspective. We're also sometimes compromising from a performance perspective. When people are doing responsive to mobile, they're often keeping the same images and then and loading them on a mobile device, or they're or the application stays the same. Anyway, I'm going to keep moving. So I'm going to move into adaptive design. So this is a really big thing. Like when we worked on ESPN.com, it's a really complex infrastructure. You can see that there's a lot of elements. If you know ESPN, they support almost every sport out there. So we couldn't just use responsive to go here. We actually had to take adaptive measures. But at the time when we launched this, adaptive measures basically meant almost 2 code bases. And sustaining 2 code bases kind of sucks. I mean, they're willing to do it because they have big resources and big teams, but but it's not the smartest thing. But going into now, what I'm pretty excited about is this idea of atomic design and modern JavaScript frameworks like Vue.js, which is we're using. I don't know if everybody knows what atomic design is, but it's basically thinking at the atom level, building up molecules and then organisms, and then using them for layouts. And so we actually have a developer toolkit with interfaces that developers can build without having to touch design or front-end development for that matter. And so we maintain all these kind of molecules and atoms and stuff like that as a library for developers. And they're built to work well together in any way. And we manage those things through Storybook. I don't know if you know this, but and it gives us the ability to be able to really manage these different pieces, and the front-end developer and the designer to really collaborate together on this element right here. Now, of course, then the designer is going to take them and prototype them together to understand layout and composition and things like that. But ultimately, this is the end result. And it comes together into, you can't see on the screen, so this looks like nothing, and then how the elements kind of come together. But we don't only do that internally. We just launched a website with a client who really wanted to take an atomic design approach, and it was really exciting to be able to work together with them and to push things, because clients usually want to see comps. Not atoms. They get confused when you start showing them. We were able to really apply this, and it was really exciting to work with this client. So, okay, I'm going to go through this one really quickly. So, because the really key point here is, so designing, so we're seeing a transition, like we're seeing people going from using UI elements that have been designed for a native app in web, and people who are using web stuff in a native app. And there's this, and there's some standardization going. And we just want to say that not only you need to think about context at the device level, you actually need to think about context from that level too. Because ultimately an app is kind of a basically linear path going into the app and then toggling between the different pieces, whereas web is fully integrated into the web experience. People are coming in from different directions. It's used holistically with social and things like that, and it's just like it's a little bit more complex ecosystem. And so, for example, from a branding perspective, on a mobile app, you're coming in from a front screen. You don't need as much branding at the top. So therefore, you can use it for functionality. Whereas on a mobile web, you need to introduce the branding because people are not going to know where they are. They're going to come from social, et cetera. And so you need to use that real estate for branding. Also, you can see here, like for example, even on a light level or Spotify. So there's this kind of like. And then also you have this tab navigation, for example, which is starting to become popular on web apps too. This works really well, with a local container that you can just kind of pop through. But with a website, like for example, they wanted to do it on Quartz. There's a few problems. Not only does Safari, have their own bar, because we're in Safari, we're not in our own world, or Chrome. So not only do they have their own bar, that every time you actually click on the navigation, the bar pops up, and so you have to click twice. But also, there's performance implications. We have to go back to the network every single time to call those things. And while, like, for example, YouTube fixes that by like disappearing the navigation and going into a load bar, it's just not as elegant as a native app solution. And so, these are examples, I believe, of where things are going back and forth, that might not work, and we just have to address these things and think about them. Okay, I'm going to finish on this. The myth of mobile context. So, we're always thinking in an app context of apps for channels, mobile, desktop, Android, etc. And rightfully so, because each platform has their challenges. But just because my screen is small doesn't give anyone insights into my behaviors, desires, and needs. And ultimately, context is always about the user. So we can talk about device context, we can talk about all these different, but ultimately that's a channel-based context. Like, how do we bring it to the user level? And users only basically care about their goals and meeting their needs. So how do we move beyond the channel? The online services behind apps we create are interacting with more and more services, from notifications to chatbots to smartwatches and Internet of Things. But further, these are getting integrated to traditional. I got 5 minutes. Fuck. More traditional channels like telephone and things like that. Telephone, in person, etc. And ultimately, the user is kind of like, interacting with a lot of different channels. And, and as we start thinking about how the web works in person, and how they move kind of through that journey, of touch points. So, yeah, you got it. So the thing is that the user experience is at the service level, and I think that's the really key point here. And before we design a specific channel, we must design the service first. Or if we're designing a specific UI for one channel, we must study the service as a whole to understand the role and implications of the entire user experience. And so I think that's a key point, is that UI is simply a channel-specific thing where user experience is crossing all the channels, and understanding how that works together as a whole. Trying to skip to what's important. So here's kind of an example of like a recent store that we've created. So basically, people come in, explore, select, buy, return, the kind of user modes. But when they're selecting, they're going to try. And they might try it in store or at home. They might buy online or in store or deliver at home. They might return online or in store or pick up in store, and so on and so forth. And that's like really considering like the idea of time and space. That we can't just think about our service in a vacuum, but what time of day that the user is using it and what space are they physically in. The other point is about feelings. So what are they feeling at each step? So for example, when they're exploring, they might be excited, but also like, which one should I pick? When they select, they're looking for advice. When they buy, they're a little, nervous, like is there security, and when they return, they're frustrated. And so, being able to design the experience to satisfy feelings also. And then let's just look at some pretty pictures for the website that we created for Sonya Raquette. So basically, just as a wrap up, I'm just going to tell a funny story. So Sonya Raquette, they're a French brand. They've been exploding. They're having a resurgence, and yet their web has been stagnating. So sales are going up, but web was stagnating. But it's interesting when you actually use the website. When you go into the store, for example, and you want to buy a $10,000 dress, they're going to do whatever it takes to make you buy it. You want a coffee, you want a beer, you want a chair. We don't have it in your size. Don't worry, we're going to send the chauffeur to get it from another store. What? It doesn't fit you? Okay, we're going to bring in a seamstress from our design department who's going to sew it for you. You go to the website, well, not only was it a shitty experience, but like when you go to a page, $10,000, buy now, and then you select your color or whatever, or your size, it's like, out of stock. You serious? I'm about to spend 10 grand on this and you're gonna tell me that? Go fucking find it for me. And so that's the service. That's the user experience. It has nothing to do with web. It has everything to do with the entire service and how it works as a whole. And so when we redesigned this website, it wasn't about fancy graphics or whatever. It was about like, let's link up to your database because you have these products in your store and you just assign some things to the website. Let's link them up. Let's have one experience. Let's make it seamless. Let's make the salesperson accessible online and here, and so on and so forth. And so, anyway, context matters. Thank you very much.
Thank you.